Good morning, students. In the previous class, we have discussed about the structure of human heart as well as the anatomy of the heart. We have also discussed about the differences between the arteries and veins as well as double circuit circulation. Today, we'll discuss about the cardiac cycle. So, cardiac cycle refers to the sequence of events which occurs from the beginning of one heartbeat to the beginning of the next heartbeat. Or we may also say simply that it consists of one contraction and one relaxation of each of the heart chambers. So there we have discussed that the heart is made up of four chambers. So cardiac cycle, it consists of both the contraction and relaxation of all the atria and ventricles. Before entering that, let us first of all, we have to go through the special muscular tissue which are present within the right auricle, that are SA node, which stands for sino-auricular node, and AV node, which is atrioventricular node. So what is SA node? This sino-auricular node is an ellipsoidal strip of a muscle fiber which is located in the upper lateral wall of the right atrium. This muscle fiber possesses the highest rhythmicity among all cardiac muscle fibers and can initiate excitatory waves of the highest rate. The fibers of the SA node have high concentration of sodium ions in the extracellular fluid and negative charge inside the nodal fibers. So due to the change in the difference in the charges, a potential difference gets created, and which leads to create the impulse within the heart. So one more, that is AV node, that is atrioventricular node. It is also a specialized cardiac muscle fiber on the interatrial septum, means the wall which is partitioning the left auricle and the right auricle. There this particular AV node is present, and on the right side, and it forms the only continuity between the atrial and ventricular muscles. So now let us will try to understand about the cardiac cycle. We have also gone through that the phase of contraction of the heart chamber is called the systolic phase, whereas the phase of relaxation of the heart chambers is known as diastolic phase or diastole. So a complete heartbeat consists of one diastole and one systole of each of the atria and ventricles. So this is about the mode of contraction and relaxation occurring within our heart. So each cardiac cycle, it lasts for about 0.8 seconds, and it consists of 5 phases, which are joint diastole followed by atrial systole, then atrial diastole followed by ventricular systole, and then followed by ventricular diastole. So first, we'll try to understand what is joint diastole. As the name suggests, joint means all the four chambers we are correlating, and they are in the diastolic phase, means they are in the relaxed phase or relaxation phase. So what happens? It is the brief period in the cardiac cycle when both atria and both ventricles, they are in the relaxed state simultaneously, and during this phase blood continues to flow through the major veins into the atria. So we may observe, we have discussed in the double circuit circulation that in the right auricle the blood, it get enters from the different body parts to superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, whereas within the left auricle the blood, it is coming back from the lungs after reoxygenation. So during this phase, during the giant diastole, what we observe that the blood flows to these major veins back to the heart. And what happens, and the 70% of the blood which is flowing within these atria, they are also moving slowly from respective atria to their respective ventricles, means from the left auricle to the left ventricle, whereas from the right auricle to the right ventricle, due to that open atrioventricular wall. So do we have discussed the wall which was regulating the opening between the left auricle and left ventricle was called as bicuspid valve, whereas the valve guarding the opening between right auricle and right ventricle was known as tricuspid valve. So as the cardiac impulse from the SA node, do we have discussed just now, SA node is situated in the right atrial chamber. So as the cardiac impulse, it gets originated, it reaches the atrial muscles and they start their systole phase simultaneously, means they undergo the contraction phase. So the second phase, that is atrial systole, these chambers, they go through their contraction phase. So as the atria or auricles, they contract, whatever the blood was remaining behind within these both auricles, they are pumped into their respective ventricles and blood flow into the atria stops as the roots of the veins get closed by the contracting atrial walls. So as these atria, they go through the contraction phase, the openings of these veins, means the veins which were bringing the blood back to the left auricle and the vein which were bringing the blood back to the right auricle, they gets closed due to the contraction of the muscle, and the mouth, it get closes automatically. Now afterwards the third phase start, which is atrial diastole. So what is atrial diastole? From the name we may understand, means the atria, now it will go through the relaxation phase. So what is atrial diastole? As all the blood from both the auricles or atria is pumped to their respective ventricles, the atria start their diastolic phase and the blood starts moving into the atria. So as they goes through the diastolic phase, the openings of the respective veins, they get open and the blood is now again coming back to their respective atria. Now the heart, it goes through the fourth phase, which is called ventricular systole. So as the name suggests, means the ventricles, they will be undergoing through the phase of contraction, that is systolic phase. So what happens towards the end of the atrial systole, the action potential which has been generated by the SA node passes to the AV node, that is atrioventricular node, and then to the ventricles through the AV bundles as well as bundle branches and Purkinje fibers. So we know that our heart is surrounded by these types of particular muscle fibers, and that helps to transmit the impulse generated from the SA node to the entire structure of the heart. So consequently, ventricles start contracting and the pressure inside the ventricles, it starts increasing. As the ventricles, they will be going through the phase of contraction, obviously a high pressure would be developing within these ventricles, and as the AV valve closes to prevent the ventricular blood back to the auricular chamber. So these we have discussed, this bicuspid valve present between the left auricle and left ventricle, and the tricuspid valve present between the right auricle and right ventricle, they get closed, and due to which the first hertz sound is produced, which is called as love sound, that which lasts for about the certain duration around about 0.16 to 0.9 second. So as the ventricular pressure increases, what happens and exceeds that of the aortic pressure, the semilunar walls. So where are the semilunar walls? There we have discussed that the opening of the arteries which are opening from the respective ventricles, there certain walls are present which are called as semilunar walls. They get opened, and what it causes, the blood is pushed into the pulmonary trunk. So from the right ventricle, the blood gets pumped to the pulmonary artery. It will be pumped to the lungs, whereas from the left ventricle, it would be pumped to the aorta from the left ventricle to different body parts. Now, the heart, it undergoes through the fifth phase, which is called ventricular diastole, which means the chambers of the ventricles, they will undergo through their relaxation phase. So as the ventricles relax, the ventricular diastole starts. So there is a decrease in the ventricular pressure as the volume of these ventricles, they get increases due to the relaxation phase. So obviously the pressure declines, and the semilunar walls which were guarding the opening within their respective arteries, they gets closed to prevent the backflow of the blood from the respective arteries to their respective ventricles. So due to that particular closure of the semilunar walls, the second hertz sound is produced, which is called as dub. So which lasts for a very shorter duration for about 0.1 seconds. And as the AV walls are open, the AV walls means the auricular ventricular walls that we have discussed, the bicuspid walls and the tricuspid walls, they are open, and the blood starts flowing again into their respective ventricles even before the atrial systole starts. So again, after the ventricular diastole, the heart undergoes to the joint diastole, followed by the atrial systole, again followed by the atrial diastole, followed by the ventricular systole, and again through the ventricular diastole. So like this, the cycle is repeated again and again. So we may calculate the heartbeat. Just we know that the duration of each cardiac cycle, it lasts for around about 0.8 seconds, and we know in a minute there are 60 seconds. We have to divide it by that particular each cardiac cycle duration. So we will get approx around about 72 times the heart beats. One more important aspect do we have to consider, which is stroke volume and cardiac output. So first, what is stroke volume? Means the volume of blood which is pumped by both these ventricles during their systolic phase during the cardiac cycle is known as the stroke volume. So the stroke volume is around about 70 ml. And whereas what is cardiac output means cardiac output, we may understand that the volume of blood which is pumped by the ventricles per minute, and which accounts for about, we may calculate it easily, that means per cardiac cycle around about 70 ml of blood is pumped, and in a minute around about 72 times the heart beats. So we may calculate it easily that per minute 70 into 72 ml means around about approx 5000 milliliter of blood is pumped per minute through our heart. And we may also understand which is around about approximately the equal to the total volume of the blood in an adult human body. So this was about the cardiac cycle consisting of the 5 phases, and the stroke volume, cardiac output, as well as we have discussed about the SA node, AV node, how do they conduct the impulse from the respective parts to the entire heart. Till so far here, thank you. Have a nice day.